Vitaimo, on behalf of the UCC Saskatchewan Board of Directors, welcome to the 2021 Nation Builders and Community Recognition Awards program. While we're disappointed that we're unable to gather together to acknowledge and celebrate this year's award recipients, their accomplishments are by no means diminished. We will one day gather in person to celebrate both this year's and last year's award recipients once it is safe to do so. The breadth and depth of our Ukrainian culture and our Ukrainian community is alive and well throughout this province as we virtually gather to congratulate and acknowledge this year's award recipients. Their accomplishments not only serve to enrich our lives, but also provide inspiration for our Ukrainian descendants to keep on growing and evolving while never forgetting our ancestry. As we embrace diversity, we do so from a strong sense of who we are as Ukrainian Canadians, where we have come from, and what we have to offer. I'd like to thank the committee for all their efforts in facilitating this program. A thank you to our sponsors, thank you to the people involved in producing this video, and thank you to all the people who submitted nominations. Get ready to be inspired. Sit back and enjoy the stories of our 2021 award recipients.
Slava Isusu Christou. I'm Lissa Gruza, Chair of the UCC Saskatchewan Recognitions Committee. Once again this year, we are unable to physically meet and to introduce the honorees selected to receive recognition. Thanks to the funding of the Dr. Stephen and Mikhailina Worobets Foundation, to Muzej Ukraina Museum and the Ukrainian Museum of Canada for hosting interviews, and to Rosalie Wolofsky for conducting interviews with our honorees, we are able to introduce the 2021 recipients of Nation Builders and Community Recognition Awards virtually. The selection and preparation for this virtual presentation requires the involvement and efforts of many individuals. The committee, comprised of members Ken Mazur, Zinovia Duch, Sonia Jan, and myself, reviews nominations received from the community. UCC SPC staff assists in contacting honorees and compiling the necessary information and materials for each interview. Once interviews are conducted by Rosalie, they are edited and prepared for George Hupka, who brings all the elements together to present a virtual introduction of our award recipients. Special thanks to Father Patrick Powolinsky, Irina Mycyk, Marina Bondar, Danilo Pudorak, and Ihor Kudak for their assistance in the preparation process. Congratulations to our 2021 Nation Builders and Community Recognition Awards recipients. We are thankful for all your achievements and contributions, and we are honored to recognize you. We look forward to meeting and celebrating with you in the near future. I would like to take this opportunity to invite and encourage members of the community to nominate individuals you believe worthy of recognition for their contributions. Please contact the UCC SPC office or website for information.
I'm Merv Ozirny, and I'm the grateful recipient of a Nation Builders Award. I would say that for the first 12 years of my life, my life took place within about a 10-mile radius of Parkerview. It was my parents both come from large families. My father comes from a family of 9. My mother comes from a family of 15, and most of the aunts and uncles and grandparents lived in the area, and it was a amazing time growing up. Like I say, it was a small town with not a great number of opportunities, but you really learned to love family, people, and the neighbors around you. Both sets of my grandparents came from Bukovina, and both sets of families settled within a few miles of each other. So there was very, very strong family bonds built throughout. And I must say that the Ukrainian culture was extremely important. The maternal grandparents were about a mile and a half from a Greek Orthodox church called St. John Suchava. And of course, the church was a very strong part of our lives as well. Both sets of grandparents and both sides of the family respected Ukrainian tradition and celebrated the traditional meals, cultures, and holidays. And it was a very, very strong part of growing up. As I grew up, I saw situations of problems existing between individuals and police, between individuals and individuals, and there was really no place for these people to take their disputes to. There were lawyers certainly in Yorkton, which was about 40 miles away, but there seemed to be a void in community when it came to dealing with natural justice, fairness, and things that were right for people. So at an early age, I decided that the law was where I wanted to go. I attended an eighth grade one-room school, and the opportunity to even get your university, to get your high school was a challenge. But when we reached grade 9, our parents sent us to Yorkton to attend the high school there. And of course, that was a big transition to go from tiny little town to a big city, so to speak. But I always knew I wanted to practice law. And after I finished high school, like my siblings ahead of me, there was no money to go to university. So you had to work, do whatever you had to put yourself through. Probably the most momentous case I had involved a murder in Arizona back in the late 90s. A couple was charged with murder. And it was a very long and trying procedure. It took many years, but in the end result, justice was done. And that is one case that will stand out in my mind quite vividly. Another would be the first time I took a case to the Supreme Court of Canada, which is the highest court in the land. And not everyone gets an opportunity to practice in that court. So I very much enjoyed my appearances, both in the Supreme Court of Canada and the various federal courts of Canada. That comes from my grandpa, Nick Ozirny, in the little village of Parkerview. My grandfather was the justice of the peace, the merchant, and school trustee and the reeve of the town. So he was the leader to whom many, many people relied upon. And both my grandparents and my parents taught me that you must return to the community much more than you gain for it. So that's been instilled in me and has been the focus of both my economic development on the local level, provincial, and the federal international level through the Central North American Trade Corridor. I was elected the international president of that association, served for several years. The CNATC is an association of Mexican states, American states, and Canadian provinces that share highway number 83 that goes from Canada, from the Paw, Manitoba, straight down into Mexico. And it was designed to streamline transportation as products rolled both ways, and to develop a knowledge, actually to serve as a clearinghouse among those three countries to provide small and middle-sized businesses with opportunities to grow into larger fields. When I went to high school in Yorkton, I joined the Air Cadet Squadron there and remained a cadet throughout high school. And then in later years, got my commission as an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces and did work with the Air Cadet League. When I got to the point where I was required to retire because of age, I then became involved with the with the civilian associations that ran the cadet programs. And in 2018, I was elected the national president of the Air Cadet League of Canada. And that had to be a highlight for me. Cadets had done so much for me personally in terms of development. And again, it was a matter of wanting to give back to the source that you got great things from. The national presidency is the highest office in the Air Cadet League. We look after something like 28 or 29,000 cadets. And it was just nice to know that someone from little old Parkview could, in fact, become the national president. We come from very staunch Ukrainian stock, as many people do, with a very, very wonderful work ethic. And not only my parents and my grandparents, but my sisters, my three older sisters, they were very high achievers. They set the bar very, very high. And I would say that the work ethic and love of community would be the biggest highlights of my Ukrainian culture. With Kathy, who has stood by me through thick and thin for the last 20 years, we have kept the Ukrainian culture alive. We have honored the traditions. We celebrate the traditional Easter meal, Christmas meals, the holidays. We had lessons in Ukrainian dance when we were going to public school. I'm proud to say that all three of my daughters Ukrainian danced, and I still have three grandchildren who are still in Ukrainian dance today. And all of my children and grandchildren take part in making pisanka and knowing what the traditions are all about. And it's lovely to see the youngsters carrying on the tradition, the very proud tradition. Sense of identity, we respect our elders, we respect all of the well-known traditions. It's a sense of pride and accomplishment that I think, also the satisfaction. I mean, when you see the children with making their Easter eggs and admiring them and seeing the products, it's a feeling that you just can't describe. My advice for young people is to aim high. Don't be afraid to overachieve. Aim high and work hard. Do something that you love to do. If you choose a avenue or a work direction that you love, you will likely succeed and do well in it. Let me just say that one of the highlights that I haven't mentioned until now is being the recipient of the Nation Builders Award. That certainly goes down as one of the highlights of my life and something that I will always be very, very proud of.
My name is Vera Lazarowich-Senchuk, and I'm the recipient of the Nation Builders Award. We lived on a farm, we were not rich, we were not well off. When we went to the store every Saturday, I didn't really want any candy. The thing that I wanted most was a new pencil. And if I could get a scribbler, and if the pencil was store sharpened, I would be in heaven. My mother and my grandmother were both weavers. My grandmother in the old country wove and of course embroidered, and my mother was born in the old country too. And she was a weaver. They made their own cloth, but they also decorated the cloth. There is a line of art, folk artists in my family. I always had this urge to draw, and I love to draw faces. But the turning point that turned me towards iconography was when I was 18 years old, and I was the girls' guide at Waka Zelani High Camp. And I was walking one day, sunny morning. I was free that morning, and you could say that from the sky came this thought. At that time, can a girl do icons? I should mention at that time we were practicing very hard to sing the liturgy by ourselves. During my high school and university years of great importance in my life was that I belonged to SUMK, and we had sort of a Ukrainian folk singers choir. Honouree Tkachuk was instrumental in forming this choir, so I sang in the church choir and in this youth choir. We went to Expo, we went to Mexico, to San Antonio, we traveled all over Saskatchewan, and this was a very important point in my life, and we formed lifelong friends, and in fact I met my husband in this group. I really didn't begin working on iconography until much later. I was married and had children, and there would entered into my life a very important person, Mr. Dmytro Bartoshuk, who was an iconographer in his own right, studied in the old country. And I showed him my drawings, and he said to me, "Ви будете малювати, you will paint." His demeanor was very calm and loving, and wonderful to study with. So I would sit and watch him paint and make notes, and he would talk about his experiences. There were women who were working in the field, but not a full time. It would be perhaps a hobby. I know there was a lady at the consistory at our the Ukrainian Orthodox Church that she did some iconography for the church. It wasn't in the Byzantine style, and this is something that I wanted to pursue, was the authentic iconography. It being part of my spiritual life, singing in church, going to church. So to pursue art, a prayerful art, was I guess you could say attractive to me, or I had a longing for it. Mostly you start with prayer. I think about the image I'm writing, if it's Christ or a saint. I think about the saint. Of course, I think about the colors. The process itself is very freeing, and each step in the process requires a little different thought. You come face to face with your imperfections, and I guess you put your trust in the Lord that He will see you through. I've produced a lot of icons, but as many people will attest to, sometimes a particular icon takes a long time. So I cannot work on 20 at a time. Each icon deserves individual attention. If you're looking for it as a spiritual journey, then almost anybody can approach and do it, because it's a spiritual journey and an individual journey for each person. And if you go through the steps, it will be a real icon. If you go through the prayer, if you go, each step has a symbol. And if you're under, of course, the guidance of a master, then it is a real icon. Perhaps not one that you'd want to sell, but it would be a real icon suitable for prayer life. Sometimes if you have studied secular art, it's more difficult, because you almost have to unlearn the techniques that you learned. And I found that some students, it's more difficult. There's an icon called the Mother of God of Canada, which was a unique icon, and I was approached by by our church and by our metropolitan to produce an icon for the 75th anniversary of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada. And they asked me to produce a Mother of God of Canada. That took me 2 years to produce something that was within the tradition that I could, with good conscience, say that this is an icon rather than a piece of art. That took me a long time, but I was grateful for that opportunity. It's been my living. There's a lot of hard work, and especially if you've got deadlines, which you do have. Sometimes, especially churches, they'll ask you 3 years before. So I think what have I gained? A sense of discipline that perhaps being kind of artistic I wouldn't have normally. Certainly, it's improved my sense of self-worth. It's given me joy. There are moments of elation. There are also moments of frustration and moments of down. This is who can say that their life is all up? And so that's maybe taught me patience. It's a constant learning. So each icon is a fresh journey. And I guess I'll keep writing while that remains so. I guess first go to church. That is going to be your beginning. You cannot be an iconographer and not have a church and prayer life, since they are, if the authentic icon, we call it a liturgical icon. So it serves a purpose first and foremost in the church. So get a grounding in attending a church, and then find a good master.
I'm Adam Breckner, and I'm the recipient for the Community Recognition Award for Cultural Preservation and Development. I was about 8 or 9 when I started dancing. Some of the earliest memories I have are going all the way to Mycyk, Saskatchewan on Sunday afternoons for dance. And it would be a packed day we'd go to swimming lessons in the morning, and then we'd have to rush and change and go off to dance, and we'd be doing that all afternoon. And I really remember the small hall that we danced in, and it was just a small little community of us, a small little dance group out at Mycyk, but it was a lot of fun, and I remember really enjoying it. And of course, that kind of took off my love of dance throughout the years. It made me really kind of think about the Ukrainian culture. We grew up in a Ukrainian family, so we'd go do the traditional things. We'd go out to Easter, bless the baskets and all that, but this really gave kind of more of a hands-on thing that I can do, go out and perform and learn how to dance and just kind of connect even more with the Ukrainian culture. It was kind of important to me to get that extra training and stuff, just because I wanted to be at my best trying to teach the new generation dancing. So I would go and do things like workshops and I went to Ukraine quite a few times for the workshops and trained with many great choreographers and artistic directors. So that was really important for me for those reasons. It gave me a kind of new spark, a new love of the cultural aspect of dancing. A lot of time we focus on technique and, making sure our foot is in the proper position or our arms or whatever it may be. But this kind of renewed the love and the passion for trying to incorporate the cultural aspect of it, which I thought was really neat. Some of the great artistic directors I worked with, Ivan Kyliuk, Raphael Malinowski, those were two that kind of stood out, really passionate about what they do. They have a connection. Raphael Malinowski actually taught my artistic director, Kyliuk, so there's like the connection there, and I thought those were two really good ones that stood out. Of course, you have like the Virsky ensemble in Ukraine, and those were also very it was just nice to see the dedication from them. I try to kind of take a little bit of everything I know in all the different places I've been, and I try to kind of incorporate little pieces into it to make it my own. Obviously, I'm influenced by, my teachers and my artistic directors and stuff. That's a huge influence, but then you got to try to make it your own. And throughout the years, like I said, I've been to Ukraine a few times. I try to learn as much as I can there and then come back and change it up a little bit here each time. There's been many times, especially being on stage as a performer, that some of the performances, you really just kind of feel the emotion behind it and you kind of lose yourself in that emotion. I'm thinking times like when I danced in Lviv in I believe it was like the Opera House there in front of sold out crowd, places like Dauphin, Manitoba at the Canadian National Ukrainian Festival, getting up at night with the lights on you, you just kind of lose yourself in it, the crowd's cheering, and it's those times that really make it worthwhile in studio. I would say now, as I'm a little bit older, I'm starting to enjoy the creative aspect of it, the artistic, the teaching, and the instruction. I think if you would have asked me just a couple of years ago, I probably would have said performing, but your priorities kind of change over time, and I think now I would have to say the creative aspect of it. I'd say try it all. There's not much downside to going out and trying something for a little bit of time. You'll gain a new perspective. If there's something you don't enjoy, at least you'll know you don't enjoy it. If there's something you love, you can pursue it and continue on and perhaps do something great with it. Thank you to everyone involved in the Ukrainian community for keeping things like this going. I think it's really great that the UCC puts on these kind of awards and recognitions because it helps shine a light on people who are doing great things. And there is a lot of people doing great things around the community, volunteering, teaching people, and just helping out around Saskatoon and the rest of the province. So just want to say thank you to everyone who's involved in the community.
My name is Sonia Bremner, and I am the 2021 recipient of the UCC Saskatchewan Community Recognition Award for Leadership and Volunteerism. We did everything as a family. I grew up with my grandmother in the house and a couple of uncles. It was a small little farmyard, and we did everything together. We went to church together. We went to the neighborhood auditorium. It wasn't an auditorium. It was an old school that was converted to a hall. That's where we did our community dinners and teas and fall suppers, and it was just part of life, part of who we were. And we just that's where I think I gained my awareness of helping and being surrounded by other Ukrainians and doing what you need to do. Even though it's not that far away, when we moved, I didn't know anyone other than my own family. I didn't know anybody in school. I didn't know the Ukrainian community. I didn't know who lived down the street. So that took a while. That kind of, I think, set things back a little bit until you get to know all these people and how they all fit into your puzzle. It was new and it was exciting because now you got to meet new people. You got to go to Ukrainian dancing class. I didn't know there was such a thing until then. And Ukrainian songs, because there was a Ukrainian choir for the youth. A lot of wonderful people, not only in our church, but with our priests and with the bishops. That's something that a lot of people don't get a chance to meet and sit down with them right next to you to have dinner with, which I did on several occasions, mainly because of the position that I held with the Ukrainian Women's Association as president, not only locally, but I was provincially as well. And it gave me a chance to visit a lot of vigils, a lot of locals throughout the province. That came from a meeting with the Ukrainian Women's Association. One of the meetings is, hey, we've got all these wonderful recipes, let's put it into a cookbook. And my mother convened that cookbook. She is the author of that cookbook per se, even though there were 12 women, I believe, on that committee. So of course she dragged me into it. It's come here, do this, check this recipe out. How about that? Help me with the accounting portion of it. And then when she went traveling with the cookbook, it's come with me. So I would go with her on these trips that she took across the province. Oh, the response was wonderful. I believe we've sold over, I'm going to guess about 85,000 cookbooks have been sold to date. That's been keeping our local going, and through the profits of that, many children have been helped going to camp with that. We've donated to the Ukrainian Museum of Canada, to Peter Mohela Institute, to lots of places here and there, St. Andrew's College, just to name some of the larger places, as well as Hospitals of Regina have seen quite a bit of our dollars going to help the children's wards and the cancer clinics at the hospitals as well. Even though I have instilled upon my children to go to Sunday school, to go to Ukrainian school, Sopatyk, to go to Ukrainian camp, to go to dancing. They know that, so that is instilled in them as their culture. But just like anybody else, unfortunately, I see them steering away. They do know it's there and they appreciate what they have. But I don't know how far it's going to go with what's all in the world today. I've been able to get up and go to places and speak to people, and felt good about myself being in the community. I guess it's a passion, right? Mm-hmm. Something I've acquired, I've enjoyed doing, and I keep doing it. Oh my goodness, get to know your background. Get involved, even if it is at an early age, get to know what it is, and then take it from there.
My name is Sharon Harras, and I am a 2021 recipient of the UCC Saskatchewan Community Recognition Award for Volunteerism. I was born in Regina. And then when I was 10 months old, I gathered that's when we moved back, or moved there, because both mom and dad were from the area. I have one brother, and he's younger than I. I was working in Saskatoon at the university and in the electrical engineering department as a secretary, I guess it's called. And he was there doing his doctorate. And I think he needed I always say he needed a thesis typed. So I was the one that did it. I like sewing, and I like cooking, and I took to the Pesinka writing right away. Tony had he had me doing that before we were married. We had some little sessions. I think it was a test, maybe. But anyway, that's kind of when I got started doing that. And then it just continued because I liked it. It all spoke to me because of the colors, nice bright colors and everything. And I like to, like I said, like to sew, I like to embroider, and cooking. I'd get cookbooks, and then of course, yes, when you're in the community, you belong to groups that they have all these dinners that you need help with. So there you go, you get helping in that, and you learn. And like I say, my Ukrainian is kitchen Ukrainian, because I can tell what's going on around me if they're speaking Ukrainian in the kitchen. So. And I did take some Ukrainian classes a couple of times, and then I did become a member of the Ukrainian Women's Association. They let me in, and I do a lot through them. We do make food to sell, to raise money, and have the bazaars and the usual thing. Well, I like baking, so I do like making the bread, and the braided bread, and I like doing that. And I do it for Easter and Christmas all the time. Oh yes, I like that. I'd started January 1st writing them, because it wasn't all like volunteer. I did sell them at Bazaar in Regina, and so I'd start kind of January 2nd and go right up till June, and late nights. Well, I was a weaver also, and you may have seen that in my bio that I did go to Banff and take I think it was a week-long course in weaving in Ukrainian patterns, and then I quilt now, or I have quilted for some time. I don't know that I've made anything quilted Ukrainian, but other than one big quilt I have with poppies, and poppies are a favorite flower of the Ukrainians. So, just being with the other women and having like interests, it helps fill the time and find a space to put these other ideas in. It's just the companionship, I guess. Yeah, put some diversity in your life, and don't make one thing the be all and end all. And you'll be educated that way, getting interested in your own community. Have a tolerance for other people and how they live, and that's it.
Alicia Klopoushak, Community Recognition Award for Cultural Preservation and Development and Volunteerism. One of my fun memories is joining my grandparents in Shortdale, Manitoba, when I was very much younger, 5, 6, and 7 years old. And I attended the summer programs there when I stayed with them in the Narodny Dom, a hall specially organized just for cultural activities, Ukrainian cultural activities. That was a very strong center in Manitoba. It was that beautiful hall that had the exquisite Ukrainian painting, historical painting on the back wall. And we learned, as a group, we understood that there was a community of us who were speaking Ukrainian language and singing the beautiful folk songs. And it was a very wonderful time of growing up in a totally Ukrainian milieu. At that time. My mother's parents and my mom had emigrated from Ukraine. They felt very strongly about maintaining a strong Ukrainian identity. And they established community organizations that were Ukrainian cultural, Ukrainian musical, had to do with the religious aspect of their lives. And they were leaders and volunteers, and like full-out volunteers in all of those organizations that were being established at that time. My dad's parents were also community leaders. My grandfather on my dad's side was a school teacher. He had been an immigrant as well, but he was one when he came over to Canada in the early 1900s. And as teachers, they were community leaders. So taught English language classes all day in school, but immediately switched to Ukrainian language classes, Ukrainian cultural classes, music, for after school activities, for weekends, for all the special events. They were very involved with things like that. So really, it came from both sides to be involved. It probably goes to the very essence of who I am. Music is just, I feel the music, I feel the tragedy, the sadness, the happiness of it. They say it gives you a little high when you are performing. I continue to perform, and I love performing music, whether it's just subtly and respectfully and humbly in church as part of the church choir, or whether it is on stage with Lazarowich or with University Chorus or whoever it happened to have been in my lifetime, it was always just wonderful to be able to communicate that way. They left me with a love of life. They left me with understanding how the discussions that we had really helped form their feelings of social justice. And I'm so pleased to see how many of them are out in the world actually dealing with them through their professions, different social justice, taking things to high levels, being the very strongest volunteers in their community to being the very strongest leaders in, say, a medical field, or however that happens to be, however humble or however magnificent the profession. Many of them came with a very basic working knowledge, and the spouse may not have known very much, or they knew just enough to get through their jobs, but not to perhaps conduct daily life. I had spoken with several of them kind of as an after-church greetings, and finally some of them said to me, "Hey, you're a teacher, could you just teach us some English so we could get by a little bit better?" So it started upon their invitation to teach them English. And then I was able to have little classes at school, in the school classrooms at the church hall. And then that moved to more and more people wanting to have classes. So my principal at Greystone Heights School invited me to consider using the school for after-school classes. So we were able to get 1, 2, 3 classes established there. And then throughout the public school system, we were able to have classes established. There's a richness to the cultural multiplicity that we are in Canada when we can add our Ukrainian song and our Ukrainian dance and our Ukrainian music and our bread traditions and our cultural traditions for various holidays, all of those kind of things. I think it just makes it a beautiful, rich Canadian culture then. Be true to yourself. Connect with yourself. Connect with who you are. Connect with those that came before you, and bring with you those aspects of their cultural teachings and histories that you think are important, or that you think are important to tuck away for another time. And so that you will always be a very much larger person for that.
My name is Walter Kyliuk, and I am the recipient of the 2021 Community Recognition Award for Cultural Preservation and Development. I was born and raised on a farm north of Hafford. I'm the youngest of 4 children, 3 older sisters. And Ukrainian was the only language spoken in the home. My mother used to sing when she worked and did her housework. And eventually I accompanied her on violin as she sang. I was also very blessed to have a teacher that was very musical. My parents paid for the lessons with cream and eggs from the farm. I just yearned to be a musician, to learn to play and be a part of a band, and just I just had this passion. I don't think there's anything that would match up being more fulfilling than playing for Ukrainian weddings. And you know, people didn't realize that we would have played for nothing because we enjoy doing it so much. They fed us, they gave us drinks, and they still paid us. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
Having an opportunity to back the living legends Mickey and Bunny. After I retired from teaching, I discovered that he was looking for a band to back them up on their reunion tour. So I sent him an audition of my fiddling, and he said, if you could get a band to back you, you're on. Well, it was interesting what it has given me. It gave me an opportunity to meet my wife. We're married now 56 years, and we are very blessed. It was part of my DNA, just a love of the music.
Yeah.
My mother sang at all the Ukrainian weddings.
Yeah.
And my sisters, 3 sisters, learned the songs from her, and of course I did likewise. And one of the albums that we recorded was the very songs that Mother sang, you know, throughout the years. I got a band together to back Mick and Bunny up on their tours. We backed them up for 3 years. Mickey taught me a lot about so much about music and stage presentation and everything else. I relish that experience that I had backing them up.
Right. Well,
For example, our music is being heard regularly in a Saturday night dance party on CJWW. And I'm amazed that the amount of Ukrainian music that's played regularly on that program, somehow it should be labeled the Ukrainian dance, dance hour. In 1975, before my dad passed away, I captured his memories, made a documentary of his life, and of course that was on a video footage, and I've captured already over 100 people that in fact, I'm getting requests from children and grandchildren of these people. Unless you capture and preserve them, one of these days you won't be hearing them.
that's right.
Everybody has a unique story, a unique history, and they're just so worthwhile delving into. And there's 2 decisions in life that will be the most important decisions that I'll have to make, and that is choosing a career and choosing a partner in life. If either one of those choices won't be the right one, their life won't amount to as much as it could be otherwise.
My name is Annie Lyzaniwski from Regina, Saskatchewan, and I am very happy to receive the Community Recognition Award for Leadership. I was born in Regina. I lived there till I was 60 and went to Ukrainian school. Friday night was Ukrainian dancing. Saturday morning, you went to Ukrainian school. So you took part in plays and concerts and choirs. That's how I grew up. My parents were very much involved, both at St. Basil's with the UCWL, and she was a wonderful singer. She had a good voice, so she was quite active in the choir and with the UCWL. And I grew up in that atmosphere. That was just the normal thing for me. For dancing lessons, you were always short of boys, so we would just ask the friends or the boys that lived down the street or around the block, come, we need partners. So, and they were good sports. A lot of them were good sports. They would just come and take the lessons, whether they liked it or not, I don't know. But one of the boys, and I remained friends with him, he became mayor of the city. So maybe we were a good influence on him, I don't know. We had a lot of fun. I remained friends with, quite a few of the Ukrainian schoolgirls or dancing girls. And Father Kyliuk was our parish priest then. And he was really good. He had such a way with the youth, and he was very hospitable. If you sang in the choir, for example, on Shetivecha, you would go to church and you'd have your main meal, and then you'd go to midnight mass, and then the rectory, he would throw a party for the choir. The ladies would, in the choir would help him, but he would buy everything, and we would just all march there and we'd have a party for a few hours. And this would be after midnight mass. I enjoyed working with a lot of people. I learned a lot of different things, the personalities, and their strengths or weaknesses. And I find being organized, I don't find it difficult. Some people do. They'll put off doing things, and I get very antsy. I can't operate that way. But I don't know. I don't know if I can really give a really good answer on that. I hope I was dedicated enough and responsible enough. It was a joy when all the ladies used to come, because with Mycyk, you had three women's organizations preparing food. So UWO we did the Veranikia, two, and St. Basil's were doing Veranikia, and the Orthodox did the Holopchi. And you'd get you have your older women, your babunyas, and they had nothing to do. So they loved to come. We always gave a hot dinner. We had coffee or something going all morning, but a hot dinner, and they would never want to have dinner until they were finished. So when the 3,000-4,000 or how many we were making or pinching, they wanted to finish, then they would sit down and we'd have our dinner. And of course, we always had some wine, and they enjoyed it. Just when I think of, say, going back to Ukrainian school, when we put on plays or concerts or whatever, people just that lived on the block would come. It was an outing, but Ukrainians are usually good singers. They're musically inclined. So that would be part of it, I think. It's made me who I am. I'm very proud. All my friends, if they weren't Ukrainian, they certainly knew I was Ukrainian. I let them know, but I was called an ethnic one time, and I thought, yeah, I probably am. Oh, be proud of what you are. Absolutely. Make sure people know you're Ukrainian.
I'm Anna Mycyk, recipient of the 2021 Community Recognition Award for Cultural Preservation and Development. I was 12 when I came to Canada, and I do have many memories of England, particularly a memory of a park with a museum that we used to walk through to get to church every Sunday. And we would stop at the museum often on our way home. And this is where I first saw things that I wouldn't normally see in my life. Artifacts and natural history preserved at this museum. It was quite fascinating. When we moved to Canada, we moved to Toronto, which has a very vital Ukrainian community. It's one of the reasons that my father chose Toronto to move to. My husband's work brought him to Saskatchewan, and we are very, very happy that we moved here. It's the most beautiful place. In iconography, the central part of iconography is prayer. So we begin with prayer, and prayer works throughout the writing of an icon. And in writing an icon, especially the feast day icons, we delve into that history. And so it's more than just a visual aspect. And of course, the visual aspect is a huge drawing card. There is a mystery in it. In the process of writing an icon, with the many, many steps that we have, there also seems to be a little bit of a mystery too. This icon is a feast day icon. It is called the Presentation of the Temple. We have Joseph and Mary presenting Christ at the temple. We have Saint Simeon and Saint Anna here receiving him. And Saint Anna, the prophet, is recognizing Christ for who he is. And Saint Joseph, they're a poor family, so he brings 2 doves to the temple as well to give as an offering. This appears that it's happening outside, but because of this red drape that you see here, it indicates that they're already moved into the temple. In 2019, when my husband and I visited Ukraine, and we hadn't been there for many, many years, and I wanted it to be a very special trip. I knew I was going to Kyiv as well. People are always going to Ukraine to bring something from Ukraine. And I said, well, I want to bring something to Ukraine. A show of my gratitude for my culture and for what I have. And I chose to take this icon to Ukraine, humbly, to give it to the patriarchal cathedral if they would like. And so as it turned out, he was quite pleased with the icon and asked if I could write the other 12 icons, feast day icons for the cathedral. At this time, I'm about halfway through this project. Well, it's given me direction. There's a certain purpose in life, and learning, just the opportunity to learn about things that, the concepts that I would never have thought of. And I can see, and also the opportunity to teach. I think that's been very important. To continue learning throughout your life is the advice that I would give people, young people. And I think that they should be learning in an active way, meaning use the resources that you have. There are physical resources, such as a museum here that we have, where you can learn from actual experiences that have been preserved. By seeing real things, getting out and being in the real world is what I would advise them to do, because just relying on maybe what is packaged for them in the media is not enough. It'll be very shallow. Being involved in the arts and in culture is, I think, what feeds the soul. And the soul needs to be fed, because otherwise then we become despondent. We don't know who we are or where we're going and where we came from. Who are our friends? Who are our real friends? So yes, certainly within the cultural milieu, within art, you can find people who are like-minded. Я хочу подякувати Провінційну раду Конгресу українців Канади за їх громадську працю і за підтримку нашої культури і освіти.
My name is Alicia Sopatyk, and I'm greatly honored to have received this award and being recognized for all the volunteering I've done in the 69 years as member of the Ukrainian Women's Association and the Sisterhood. And I thank them very much. I lived on the farm with my parents and siblings in the Prudhoe area, and I attended Ozirny school. There were 4 older, and I was second youngest, and I had a sister that was a year younger than myself. Yes, I got married when I was 18 years old. When I moved, my husband was living with his parents. They had no running water or power or lights or anything till the 3rd year that we were married. We had power running through, and we were lucky enough to, get it. Then got all the appliances that we needed, washer, stove, dryer, that was luxury. I didn't really help my husband too much with outside field work when the children were growing up, but once the children were all in school, so that's when I operated tractors and combine and trucks. I did helped them with all the field work, yes. I baked 14 loaves of bread every week. All their lunches were made out of the homemade bread. Never had store bread in the house. In winter time, I did help my husband doing chores like feeding the cattle and all that. But then I still had time. I took up quilting, patch quilting, made a lot of quilts and gave them all away. I held a few bees at my house when I rolled the dough for the pierogies. They pinched, we made beatniks, we did pies and they took the pies home. But pizzas, we made them and we baked them and ate them. But then when we actually gave up farming and stayed in the city, I joined the Ukrainian Women's Association and I joined the Sisterhood. So that's when all that volunteering at bees and everything and at the church really started. I took over the Prospera baking, that's the communion bread, and I did that over 11 years. I also took over, she was making pierogi dough, And I did that over 10 years. Paskas and babkas and kolachi. I love to make paskas because it's a different design. You're always creating something different. So it was very enjoyable. And it was enjoyable to be with all the ladies there. It was very nice. I really, look forward to going to the next bee. I mean, you're giving something out of yourself, not just coming to church and that's it. This way here, you are contributing. My family and church, yeah. We enjoyed going to church, and you feel better when you go on a Sunday and come back home. You've been to church. It kind of makes you feel good. I mean, I know they have careers and they're busy with what they're doing, but they should find time to come to church. Important to keep your heritage, your Ukrainian culture, and the tradition, keep it alive. That's very important. But most of the young generation are in singing and dancing. So that's very nice that they do that, yes.